Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to episode 152 of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, Executive Editor of Total Retail. Joining me today is Stephen Kuhl, the co-founder and CEO of Burrow, a startup brand that's selling luxury couches and other furniture online. We're going to be discussing how Burrow is disrupting the traditional retail furniture business. Thanks for joining me today, Stephen.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
I think it'd be a good place to start by you briefly telling our audience a little bit about Burrow.
Yeah, I would love to. So at Burrow, we like to say we sell luxury furniture for real life. And the distinction for real life is kind of for modern consumers. The traditional furniture industry is pretty outdated. They've been doing things the same way for over 100 years, and for today's modern consumer that's grown up having everything be delivered fast, for free online, having the best products curated for them, and having retailers think through the overall customer experience from the moment they hear about your brand to receiving the product, using the product, and then in the case of furniture, moving with it again. And we really felt that no company was providing the best level of experience for people. And so we started Burrow to solve that.
Yeah, so that's maybe I should ask for your background a little bit. I mentioned that this is a startup brand, so maybe you can tell people a little bit. Did you have a retail background, and and then kind of what was your inspiration for starting Burrow?
Yeah, it's funny. Neither myself nor my co-founder came from furniture at all. And if 5 years ago you told me I'd be running a furniture company, I'd tell you you're nuts. But I came from consulting and finance. My co-founder, Kabir, he was a startup engineer he was a computer engineer at a number of startups. And then he most recently, before business school, ran the retail analytics practice for Michael Kors. So he had some retail experience. But then when we got to business school at Wharton in 2015, we had to buy furniture, and for each of us, buying a couch was the biggest pain point. I went the IKEA route, rented a truck, drove to the store, spent $600 on something that ultimately took me about 2.5 hours to put together with an Allen key, I knew about the Allen key experience with IKEA. I was not prepared for the upholstery with Velcro.
And maybe a few curse words later, probably, right?
Yeah, a few curse words, several beers. It was put together, and then it ultimately wasn't even comfortable or didn't look that nice. So I was like, God, this is terrible. And Kabir had a very different experience, but equally painful. He waited for West Elm to have a sale, picked out a medium gray couch, but was told he would have to wait 12 weeks to have it shipped. And he was like, I'm in business school for 2 years. I'm not going to wait 3 months for my couch. What do you have in stock? They had this red-orange color. He was like, I guess I'll take it, whatever. And they said, okay, great. Shipping is $250, and if you want white glove delivery, that's another $100. And he was like, I live 2 blocks from the store. This is insane. So he went and got a little cart from his building and wheeled the sofa home on the sidewalk to avoid paying the extra delivery charges. And we were just blown away by the fact that, there's people that are trying to commercialize space travel, but when you want to buy a couch, it takes months to arrive, or you've got to spend hours putting it together. It's nuts. And as we did some more research for this entrepreneurship class in school, we realized that for most people, you're choosing between cheap, flimsy, disposable furniture or heavy, expensive stuff that really requires a big investment in terms of time and cost to move it again, and to receive it and move it. And there was really no in between. And we kind of felt like no matter where you turned, consumers were asked to compromise on something: price, quality, convenience, comfort. Any one of those factors, you had to give something up. And so we sought out a solution where people wouldn't have to compromise on anything.
Yeah, and in a category that traditionally has been optimized for being sold online, and we're going to get into that a little bit, further here. But so, you've mentioned some of the competitors. This is obviously furniture is a crowded space, and it's moving more and more of that business is moving online. So what is Burrow doing? You've briefly touched on it a little bit, but with that crowded environment that you're operating in, what are some of the things you're trying to do to differentiate the customer experience for Burrow?
So for us, the first and most important challenge to overcome was shipping. The reason why a $2,000, let's call it crate and barrel couch, costs $2,000 is mostly because of shipping. It costs about $500 to produce, and then because couches are big and bulky, it costs a couple $100 to ship it from the factory to the warehouse, and the warehouse to the retail store, and those back-end shipping charges are baked into the price. And so for us, step one was, how do we deliver to people faster and for less money? And the answer was to make it modular and make the pieces of the couch come apart and ship in compact boxes. We didn't want to change the materials themselves. We wanted to use the same very high-end, very durable, very comfortable materials that were sustainably sourced and just really top of the line. But then providing an easy experience for consumers to take it apart or put it back together that didn't require tools, so literally nothing like IKEA. But then by designing it that way, we're able to ship it in compact boxes with UPS ground shipping, and we reduce shipping costs by over 70% and then pass on those savings to customers. And that has a number of positive effects. One is that customers pay a lower price for something that's really high quality. It means they get their couch a lot faster because it ships straight from the factory. And it also means that they can easily get it in and out of their homes, which is a huge problem for a lot of people. And so just by that simple, innovative design, which was, as we learned through the prototyping process, not all that simple to figure out, but once we did figure it out, it ended up making a huge difference for people. And for today's modern consumers, people are moving every 1 to 3 years on average. And so you don't really want to go through the hassle of moving something that's big and expensive and heavy and might not even fit in your next space. And you also want to get it right away. And conversely, you don't want to buy flimsy disposable stuff that you're just going to leave on the sidewalk or drop off at the dump when you move to your next place.
Right. So shipping, obviously, one of the challenges that comes with selling online, and you've just discussed a little bit of how you've addressed that. Furniture being a category, another, much like apparel, I would imagine another challenge, and I'm curious what Burrow is doing to address this, is people want to test out product. They want to sit on the couch, they want to lay on it, they want to, how are you kind of dealing with that as more and more retail sales move online? There are certain categories like apparel and furniture and others that some would argue are more conducive to buying in store. What's your kind of answer to that?
I totally agree. A lot of people still want to try it out in person. I think we are seeing more and more people that are willing to trust reviews online. And if you hear about a company, in the press, and you have your friends talk about it, your friends have the couch, and then you read reviews of other people online, a lot of people are more trusting and willing to buy it online, and we offer a 30-day return policy, no questions asked, if people don't like it. But ultimately, that's whether or not you can return it is kind of a different question of if you're willing to return it, if that makes sense. And I think most of our customers, we have a very, very, very low return rate, partially because people love the product, but partially because I think if people are on the fence, they're not going to order it and be like, I'll try it out, and if I don't like it, ship it back. If you buy the couch, you're pretty set on keeping it. And so for a lot of the population, trying out a product in person is still really important. And so what we've done to address that is twofold. One is we have what we call partner showrooms. So what we realize is that as a young company, we don't have the resources to have 50 store locations across the country right away. But a lot of spaces have couches. So co-working spaces, retail stores, et cetera, across the country all have couches in their space. And so what we've done is partner with a lot of those folks to give them our couches, and we provide a list on our website of where those locations are, so that our customers, if they've gone through the whole process, they customize their couch, they're sold, they just want to try it out and see how comfortable it is, see how nice materials feel, and they can look up a location that's closest to them and go do that. And so far, we have 30 locations in over 20 different cities.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. So you mentioned the fact that this is a new brand, and we're not 5 years old. I'm curious to find out what you're doing to kind of generate that brand awareness. Obviously, it's a digitally native brand. Is it social media? Is it paid search? What are kind of some of the things that you're doing to generate that brand awareness for Burrow?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've talked to so many brands as we've gone through our journey to get advice from them, like what worked for you, what was the key. And the common piece of feedback I got from every company was there's no silver bullet. You just kind of work at a number of channels and figure out what works for you, and just keep testing things out and make sure the messaging that you communicate across several channels is all consistent. And so for us, the what's worked for getting the word out there is doing heavy customer research to put ourselves in their shoes, talk to customers, and really map out their journey to understand, what are their emotions when they're buying furniture. For most people, they're buying because they're moving. Some people are buying because they just need a new couch. Their old couch was, beat up, and maybe there's a spring sticking to the cushion, and they've just had enough. But for most people, it's moving. And so mapping out what's that process look like when you're starting to do research on your move for your next space. What are you thinking about? What are your concerns? What are your barriers to learning about a new brand? And then trying to address all of those points in a really thoughtful way. And so, we kind of break it down into a funnel like a lot of brands do, of like general top of funnel awareness, where you're just getting the word out there and hooking people's interest so that they'll go to your website and check you out. And then once you're there, it's about, feeding them the right kind of content that'll help them make the decision whether or not our product is right for them, whether or not Burrow's, going to be the best fit for their home.
Yep.
And it's a variety of channels. We've done Facebook, paid search, podcast advertising. We do a lot of speaking engagements, et cetera. But, I think what we found is, like, if you put a picture of our couch on Facebook, it's kind of hard to differentiate us from another furniture brand. Like, we didn't try to redefine what a couch looks like. We designed it to be, within that very popular mid-century modern style. But not like too drastic in any one way, because our couch was designed to be as adaptable as possible to a number of different aesthetics, so that it would appeal to more people. And so, how do you get across the message that, like, our couch is better? We say, you can assemble it in less than 10 minutes with no tools and rides in boxes, but, like, no one's buying a couch for the assembly characteristics, right? Like, that just happens to be how we've, it's how we've improved the process by which we ship it to people really fast and for less money. And all of that is way too complicated to explain to somebody when you first talk to them. And so what we found is we want to spark conversations with people. Because if I go up to somebody and ask, hey, tell me about the last time you bought a couch, oftentimes people have bad experiences with buying sofas. And so, if I ask you and you say, the last couch didn't even fit through the door, so I had to sell it on Craigslist and then order something else, I'm like, great, we solved that problem and these 5 others, and people are blown away when you explain it to them in kind of like a tailored way. So this is a long-winded way of saying that the channels that work best for us are when storytelling occurs. Yep. And so that's why podcast advertising works so well, speaking engagements work, and then just doing like activations out in the public, talking to people. We'll bring couches to various events. Or if there's a long line outside of like a brunch spot, we'll bring couches there and just set them up. And people are like, hey, what's going on? And you have organic conversations with people. And then those people walk away with, a really engaging story. And it's funny I say brunch because like we always say like our company and our story has to pass the brunch test, right? Like if you brought it up at brunch, would people be interested in this story? Or would they be like, oh God, here's this guy talking about some other stupid thing?
Right.
And if it passes the brunch test, people will share that story, and that's what we're trying to do, is spark conversations for people.
Yeah, and a little bit of a longer customer purchase life cycle. So you're kind of nurturing that relationship as you go along the different steps there.
Exactly true.
So I'm going to take it a little bit of a different direction, switch gears here. So as the leader of a kind of a disruptive company in the retail space, online retail space, what are your top priorities as you kind of lay them out for your position? Is it, establishing the right company culture? Is it hiring? Is it, scaling the business for growth? Is it all those things and a couple others that I didn't mention? What are kind of your top priorities in your role?
You hit on my top priorities like almost perfectly. It's people and culture. I think there's only so much one person can do in an organization. I think, we've recently gone through this kind of transition at Burrow from being a very early stage startup with a handful of people where everyone's kind of just getting work done, right? Everyone's trying to get the ball rolling, moving things forward, to now we're a big organization. We have about 20 people now. And, no one can do everything. But what I can do is, as my role as a leader, is make sure we have the right people focused on the right things and make sure that they have the resources they need to be successful. And so by hiring the right people and then creating a culture that is open and fosters communication and collaboration and innovation, that's what's going to help us succeed. And so that's the number one thing I spend my time on. And since we've, as an organization, been focused on that, like we've noticed massive changes in terms of productivity and what we're able to accomplish. It's funny, like in business school, they talk about, all these organizational hierarchies and structures and team structures and styles and whatnot, management styles and everything. And everybody in the class kind of sits there and they're like, yeah, that's all BS. Like, you just need to have product market fit. The people stuff's easy. That'll come easy. But no, like they were actually right. Like the professors know what they're talking about. People is the hardest thing. Like I go to these once a month meetings with other CEOs, and it's really just glorified group therapy. Everybody talks about like the number one issue on their mind, and it's always people. It's always someone that maybe needs to be let go, or some challenge with hiring, or two teams aren't communicating well with each other. It's always people, and it's because it's the most important aspect of the business. Most problems are solvable with the right people.
So, based on that, and this be my last question, Stephen, is having your experience in starting this business and running it and growing it successfully, what advice would you have for other entrepreneurs that are listening to the podcast and that they're looking to kind of grow a brand and maybe in your case at Burrow, kind of disrupt an established industry like furniture? Any thoughts on what you would advise them to do?
My advice would be figure out how to adapt all the best practices from other companies and adapt them and apply them to your specific industry. I think that was one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur is to take advice. And I don't mean it's like hard to listen to other people, but you'll get very conflicting advice from different people who are equally successful in their own right. And, if you have two people telling you the exact opposite thing at the same time, they cannot both be right simultaneously. And you have to figure out who you listen to and why you listen to it. And then sometimes you just have to completely ignore what everyone says and say, okay, here are the nuggets of, knowledge that I'm taking from them, and here's how I'm going to adapt it and apply it to my industry. And I'll give you an example of that for the furniture industry. It was, a lot of people said, oh, look at Allbirds. They never did any discounts, and that was what was so great for the brand. And Warby rarely does discounts. It's only like employee codes and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And that's why their brand is so elevated. So don't do discounts. Well, we started out not doing any discounts in furniture because we similarly said we don't want to be a discount brand. It's just like we want to be elevated and like we're selling a great product at a great value. There's no need to do sales. But then what we realized over time was everybody in the furniture industry, from restoration hardware on down, does discounts at certain times of the year, like President's Day, Memorial Day, etc. And if you're the only company that's not doing discounts and people are comparison shopping, which every customer does now, people don't buy from you, like during those periods of time. And those periods of time can make or break your year. And as soon as we finally figured that out, it made a world of difference for us. That's not to say we start doing sales every week or every month or something like that. I think that's like going too far in the opposite direction, and that's where you get into the dangerous territory of becoming a discount brand. But like there's no harm in offering sales at different points in time if people are looking for it. And so, again, that was an example of us just needing to figure out how to apply, advice from other people to our specific industry. And I think you'll see a lot of venture capitalists will talk to young entrepreneurs without fully thinking through what they're saying, and maybe they don't fully understand, the intricacies from industry to industry. But like every direct-to-consumer brand is not the same. Everybody is not copying Warby Parker just because they sell stuff online. They're selling stuff online because that's where most people are buying their products now. It's an overall like consumer trend. And so you can't just copy someone else's business model. You've got to find your own path. And sometimes that means going a little bit against the grain and against advice from very smart people.
Great. Well, that's some interesting and some sound advice. I want to take this opportunity to thank Stephen Kuhl of Burrow for joining me today. Please check out our podcast channel page, mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Stitcher, but make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. Thanks, and I look forward to you joining us on the next episode of Total Retail Talks.